Hi, and welcome to Series 4 of the Australia Academy Dern History Revision podcast. This series is going to focus on the superpower relations, i.e. the Cold War. As always, if you've not listened to any of these podcasts before, these are aimed to be between 5 and 10 minutes long, just to give you a little bit of a taste, a little bit of an injection of what's going on in each particular topic. It's not supposed to replace any other revision, your books, any timelines, cue cards, anything like that you've made before. This is just an extra little bonus to give you that little bit of information. If you haven't checked out the other podcasts that we've got available, Series 1 focuses on medicine through time and the Western Front, Series 2 focuses on Weimar and Nazi Germany, and Series 3 focuses on early Elizabethan England. Okay, Cold War, let's get started. So this is episode 7, and we'll focus on the end of the 1980s. This will be the final episode, so spoiler alert, the Cold War will end at the end of this episode. This episode is going to focus more on the Soviet Union than America, and focus on a character that I introduced to you in episode 6, which is Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev is very, very different to the other leaders of the Soviet Union. When he takes over as leader in 1985, he becomes quite clear that there's something not quite right. And he notices that, one, the economy of the USSR is failing. It's not working. The people of the Soviet Union are not happy. And foreign relations are clearly strained. So Gorbachev decides he's going to make some changes. He's going to bring something in. And he creates this thing that became known as Gorbachev's New Thinking. There are two big things that come from this. The first one is glasnost. So this essentially is openness. So what Gorbachev wanted is he wanted to increase the ability for freedom of speech and freedom to express your opinion, specifically on the government. He wanted people to tell us, how well the government was doing, what they thought of the government. I think deep down he was hoping they were going to come back and tell him he was great and everything was rosy. They didn't, and they actually highlighted quite how badly this communist government was doing in the Soviet Union. The second thing he brings in is something called perestroika, and this was a new way of doing things. It was a new economic system which had more elements of capitalism involved. So it was very much more on an open market. It wasn't the communism that we had seen for the last 30 or 40 years. The next thing that Gorbachev agrees to is something called the INF Treaty. And this was signed in 1987. This is to take SALT 1 and make it better, essentially. So it's a much better agreement. First of all, neither side, America or the Soviet Union, would be allowed any missiles with a 500 to 5,500 kilometre range. Just not allowed to have them. They should not exist. This would be mostly applied to Europe, where most of these missiles had been deployed. But this would it was more measurable. Rather than saying you're only allowed 100 missiles, well, there was no statement of how good those missiles could be. Now, these are going to be short-range missiles. You can't have long-range missiles anymore. The next thing that Gorbachev introduces is a new foreign policy, a new way for the countries of the Warsaw Pact and the Eastern Bloc to run things. And it becomes known as the Sinatra Doctrine. And this is down to Frank Sinatra's famous song, I Did It My Way. And essentially what Gorbachev is allowing is the members of the Warsaw Pact to determine their own domestic affairs. They don't have to do it the Moscow way. They can do it the Warsaw way. They can do it the Berlin way. They can do it the Prague way. Okay, so they don't have to do it they can choose their own domestic policies now. What this essentially meant then was that the USSR would not aid in helping the European communist parties because they had to figure it out for themselves. They had to do it themselves, which puts them in a bit of a sticky situation because within a few months, the communist parties of East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Romania had all been overthrown. and new democratic parties had been elected in these countries. Now, obviously, if you're allowing the democratic parties to take over, then it's showing that the communism is failing, and we start to see the collapse, essentially, of the Warsaw Pact and eventually the Cold War. The next thing that we start to see happening in the late 1980s is in 1989 we start to see the open borders, okay, and countries start to relax their borders. So the first border that opens is the border between Austria and Hungary. Now, once this border is opened and there is freedom of travel between those two nations, then there is no need for the Berlin Wall anymore, because if you live in East Germany, you can now go from East Germany down into Hungary, across into Austria, and now you're in Western Europe. You can go into France, you can go into Switzerland, you can go where you want, and you're free. So there was no need to try and cross into West Berlin to get into West Germany. Now you can easily do it by going through Hungary and into Austria. So it now meant that capitalist Europe is now open to the communist people, and it simply meant that the Berlin Wall became a completely pointless structure. Because of this, we then start to see the end of the Berlin Wall, and we no longer needed it. So in 1989, we're starting to see really growing unrest in East Germany. A lot of people not happy, a lot of demonstrations in the bigger cities like Leipzig and places like that. And with Hungary and then later Czechoslovakia opening up their borders into Western Europe, East Germans can easily get into West Germany. They don't need to go through Berlin anymore. So on the 9th of November, East Germany announced that they would be allowing freedom of travel between East Germany and West Germany. Crowds start to chip away at the wall because they realise the wall isn't needed. Germany becomes united in 1990, and East Germany becomes no more, and we get a unified Germany by then. The final thing to round this all off is that in 1991, the Warsaw Pact ended, the nations all became independent of each other, and essentially the Cold War was over. The USSR sort of falls apart, essentially. Boris Yeltsin becomes the new president of the new Federation of Russia. Gorbachev sort of slinks away, knowing full well that it was his actions that pretty much brought an end to the USSR and victory, essentially, in the Cold War for America and capitalism. So that's it. That's the Cold War in 7 episodes. If you've not checked out the other episodes yet, go back and have a little listen, see if there's anything in there that you didn't know or anything in there that can help you with your revision. If you haven't checked out the Elizabeth episodes on Series 3 or Germany Series 2 or in fact Medicine Series 1, then feel free to dip into them and find a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of nuggets of gold that you can find in there that might just help you with the upcoming exams. Thanks for taking the time to listen to these podcasts, guys. It will make a difference, I promise you. Just make sure that these are being used alongside other things as well. Don't just rely on the 5 or 6 minutes that I've been talking to you to think you're going to get through the exam with them. You're not. You're going to need to put the extra work in, but the fact that you're listening to these tells me that you're willing to put that extra work in. So put it in. It is worth it. In August, you are going to celebrate some amazing GCSE results. Well done. Keep going, guys. Catch you later. See ya.